Elena forced herself to maintain her placid smile as she processed Kai's revelation. The holographic treaty comparison rotated slowly above her desk, damning evidence glowing in red highlights. "How long have you known?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Kai ran a hand through his disheveled hair. 3 days. I needed to be certain before bringing this to you. The encryption was unlike anything I've seen. Multi-layered quantum locks designed specifically to hide from human cryptographic methods. Which means they knew we'd look eventually, Elena concluded. She tapped a section of the display, expanding a particularly egregious clause. This mutual defense provision actually prevents us from upgrading our planetary shields beyond current specifications, while placing no similar restrictions on Concord species. It gets worse, Kai said, swiping to a new document. I found minutes from a classified Concord Security Council meeting from 8 years ago. They designated Earth as a Category 3 containment priority. Whatever that means. Elena closed her eyes, recalling her diplomatic training. Something Ambassador Chen, her predecessor, had told her during her first week. Watch not what they say, but what resources they allocate. Budgets reveal true priorities. Access the Concord Financial Archives, she instructed. Look for resource allocation patterns around other Category 3 designations. While Kai worked, Elena paced her quarters, mind racing. The Concord had welcomed humanity 40 years ago, with promises of peaceful cooperation and technological exchange. Earth had been grateful, relieved, even, to find a stable galactic community, rather than the warring factions they had feared. They had signed the treaties eagerly, desperate to belong. Too eager, she thought bitterly. Too trusting. Found something, Kai announced. 3 other species received the Category 3 designation in the past century. All experienced natural disasters within a decade that significantly reduced their population and technological capabilities. Elena froze. The tsunami on New Singapore Colony. The atmospheric degradation on Titan Station. Both perfectly aligned with Concord containment timelines. Kai confirmed grimly. They're systematically hobbling our expansion while presenting themselves as our benefactors. Elena's diplomatic mask finally dropped completely, revealing an expression that would have shocked the Concord representatives who knew only her carefully cultivated poise. It wasn't rage. It was something colder, more focused. This changes everything, she said. But they can't know that we know. Not yet. She activated her secure terminal, using her highest diplomatic clearance. Priority message to Earth Security Council. Authentication race Alpha 7 Tango. Request immediate secure conference. Classification Omega. Turning back to Kai, she said, download everything you found onto isolated quantum storage. Then scrub all traces of your search patterns from the network. What's our next move? Kai asked, fingers already flying over his interface. Elena glanced at the star chart on her wall, a decorative piece that marked human colonies with small blue lights. So few, compared to the vast territories controlled by Concord founding species. We're going to play their game, she said softly, but with human rules. The door chimed, interrupting them. Elena quickly deactivated the holographic display as Kai slipped the data storage device into his sleeve. Ambassador, came the melodic trill of a Xalvor voice through the communication system. The High Council requests your immediate presence regarding a routine inspection delegation to Earth. Routine, Elena repeated, exchanging a knowing glance with Kai. How convenient. She straightened her uniform, diplomatic mask sliding back into place with practiced ease. Inform the Council, I'll be there momentarily. The diplomatic fury that would reshape galactic politics was about to begin. Commander Wright led the team deeper into the maintenance tunnels, past the recycling systems to an abandoned storage area. The space was lined with outdated atmospheric processors, their hulking forms creating a maze of shadows and blind corners, perfect for their purposes. This section was decommissioned during the last station upgrade, Wright explained, activating a small device that emitted a low-frequency hum. Signal dampener. We're ghosts now. Dr. Lay arranged the evidence they'd gathered on a makeshift display. The pattern extends beyond linguistic markers, he said, pointing to a timeline he'd constructed. Look at the progression of restrictions. Each human advancement triggers a new treaty clarification within months. They're reactive, Kai observed, studying the data. They didn't anticipate how quickly we'd develop certain technologies. That's our edge, Wright said. They'd been containing species for millennia using the same playbook. They think they understand us based on observational data. Elena circled the display, absorbing the implications. The Concord classified humanity as aggressive expansionists based on our historical records. They expected direct confrontation if we ever discovered their manipulation, which is why they've never been caught, Lay added. Other species either submitted to containment or rebelled violently, giving the Concord justification for even stricter measures. A light flashed on Wright's communicator, the emergency signal from her informant. She activated it, and a holographic projection appeared. A veteran officer, scales glistening with moisture that Elena recognized wasn't water but blood. They found the access node. The veteran gasped, voice distorted by the encryption protocols, implementing security purge, the containment plans. They're accelerating. 13 human colonies targeted for. The transmission cut abruptly, biometric data scrolling across the bottom of the projection showing cardiac arrest. Wright's face hardened as she closed the communicator. Curvan risked everything to get us that warning. 13 colonies, Elena whispered. That's nearly a third of our established worlds. Lay's fingers danced across his interface. If we extrapolate from previous accidents, we're looking at potential casualties in the millions. We need to warn them, Kai said urgently. Not directly, Elena cautioned. Any unusual communication patterns will be detected. The Concord monitors all official channels. Wright nodded grimly. We have unofficial ones. She removed what appeared to be a standard military insignia from her uniform, twisting it to reveal a quantum transmitter. Black Channel, originally developed for deep cover operations during the Mars insurrection. As Wright prepared the warning message, Elena's diplomatic channel chimed with incoming priority communication. The Concorde was requesting emergency landing clearance on Earth for a goodwill delegation. 13 colonies targeted, and suddenly they want boots on our homeworld. Elena said, the coincidence too perfect to ignore. It's a distraction, Wright concluded. Or worse, positioning key assets for whatever they're planning. We don't have time to complete the investigation. Lay said, frustration evident in his voice. We've only scratched the surface of their manipulation. Elena made a decision. We don't need more evidence. We need a response. She turned to Wright. How quickly can you reach your military contacts? Hours, not days, Wright answered. Good, because I'm about to commit the biggest diplomatic breach in human history. Elena squared her shoulders. And I need Earth's leadership ready when I do. Kai looked at her with mixture of concern and admiration. What exactly are you planning? Elena's smile was razor sharp. I'm going to give the Concorde exactly what they fear most. Humanity unleashed. The Security Council session had stretched for 9 hours, cycling between disbelief, outrage, and finally grim determination. Now, as the Antarctic facility's artificial lighting simulated dawn, Elena stood before the tactical display, refining her strategy. Operation Diplomatic Fury hinges on psychological warfare, she explained. The Concorde species have forgotten what it means to truly compete. Their dominance has made them complacent. General Santos approached the display, studying the deployment patterns Elena had outlined. Asymmetric response across multiple domains, she observed. Classic guerrilla doctrine applied to interstellar politics. With one critical difference, Elena added, we never technically violate any treaty provisions. The Shadow Fleet construction is already underway, Admiral Chen reported, projecting shipyard images from the asteroid belt. We're using modular components classified as resource processing equipment. When assembled, they form vessels with defensive capabilities that exploit the mining operation exemptions. "How long until operational?" asked the president. "First units in 2 weeks. Full complement in 60 days. "Too long," Alina said, shaking her head. "The Concorde's inspection team arrives in 36 hours. Whatever they're planning for our colonies is already in motion." "Then we accelerate the diplomatic offensive immediately," the president decided. "Ambassador Reyes has full authorization to implement Operation Diplomatic Fury. All departments will provide necessary support under classified protocols." As the meeting concluded, Alina found herself approached by Marcus Hernandez, the aging diplomat who had helped draft the original Concord Treaties. "I always suspected something was wrong," he admitted quietly. "The final language shifted during the ratification process. Subtle changes we attributed to translation issues." "You couldn't have known," Alina assured him. "Oh, but I should have." His eyes reflected decades of regret. "Diplomacy is like jazz, Ambassador. It's about the notes not played. I missed what they deliberately omitted." He pressed a small data crystal into her palm. "My personal archives. 40 years of meeting recordings the Concorde doesn't know I kept. Use them." Alina slipped the crystal into her secure pocket. "Thank you." As she prepared to depart, Kai approached with Dr. Lay beside him. The xenolinguist looked troubled. "We've been analyzing the Concorde's experimental data on human populations," Lay explained, voice tight with controlled anger. "Some of the accidents were designed to test specific stress responses. The Ganymede habitat depressurization event. They deliberately targeted family units to observe how separation affected survivor behavior." Alina felt ice form in her veins. "They're studying us as subjects, not treating us as equals." "There's more," Kai added. "The targeted colonies. They're not random. Each hosts prototype technologies that could potentially counteract Concorde control mechanisms." The pieces clicked into place. Alina had been viewing the Concorde's actions as political manipulation, but this was something colder, more systematic. Not just containment, but comprehensive control. "Change of plans," she told them. "We're not just fighting for autonomy anymore. We're fighting for survival." She activated her communication implant. "Commander Wright, implement Phase 1 immediately, and add Protocol Omega-7. Kai looked alarmed. "That's the contingency for imminent existential threat." "Because that's what we're facing," Alina replied. "The Concorde isn't trying to cage humanity. They're trying to domesticate us." As her shuttle prepared for departure to rendezvous with the Concorde delegation, Alina reviewed her revised strategy. The Concorde expected either diplomatic capitulation or military rebellion, options they had prepared for over decades. They would receive neither. Instead, humanity would introduce the galaxy to a uniquely human concept: malicious compliance with devastating precision. Alina watched with carefully concealed satisfaction as the Concorde Central Administration Bureau's processing systems struggled under the weight of human inquiries. The main atrium, usually a model of efficiency, now teemed with flustered officials from various species rushing between departments with stacks of physical documentation, a sight not seen in decades. Her latest submission, a 347-page inquiry on the definition of reasonable force, had been strategically designed to require cross-departmental review, forcing communication between sections that rarely interacted. The resulting confusion created information leakage opportunities that Kay's network was quietly exploiting. Ambassador Reyes, called a harried Lyrilan administrator, hurrying across the atrium with an exasperated flutter of wing membranes. These clarification requests, surely many could be consolidated. Alina smiled pleasantly. That would violate Procedural Directive 37B, which you established requiring separate processing for distinct semantic interpretations. We're simply being thorough in our compliance. She left the administrator stammering and proceeded to her scheduled appearance before the High Council broadcast. The Salvor spokesperson was midway through a seemingly benevolent proposal about cultural exchange programs when Alina made her move. Earth enthusiastically endorses this initiative, she interrupted, ignoring the subtle breach of protocol. We've prepared accommodation for 1,000 student delegations at all 12 major universities. Our transport vessels can begin collection within the week. The Xalvor's feather crests flattened in alarm. The proposal had been intended as a public relations gesture, not a concrete program. The cultural exchanges had always been carefully limited to prevent meaningful technology transfer. Perhaps a more gradual implementation. The spokesperson began. Gradual? Alina's voice carried gentle surprise. After 40 years of membership, Earth is eager to finally experience the full benefits of Concord participation. Unless there are concerns about reciprocity. The broadcast captured everything. The Xalvor's discomfort, the Moor representative's crystalline flicker of agitation, and most importantly, the reaction of younger species delegates who were beginning to notice the pattern of deflection. As she exited the chamber, Alina received an encrypted update from Newterra. Governor Okafer's emergency preparedness drills had successfully deployed the first phase of modular defense systems disguised as environmental stabilizers. The Concord inspection team had been so overwhelmed by technical documentation and uncomfortable culinary experiences that they'd failed to recognize the true purpose of the installations. Alina was boarding her diplomatic shuttle when the emergency alert came through. The Toth City Research Outpost, humanity's most advanced xenobiology facility, had experienced catastrophic life support failure during a Concord regulatory visit. 57 scientists dead. She canceled her departure and immediately requested an emergency session of the Concord Assembly. Her staff was startled when, instead of the expected morning attire, she appeared in full diplomatic regalia with only a small black armband acknowledging the tragedy. This unfortunate accident, she announced to the assembled representatives, highlights the critical need for technical cooperation between our species. Earth formally requests immediate sharing of Concord life support redundancy systems. The Moor representative's crystalline face couldn't show expression, but the subtle discoloration indicated confusion. This wasn't the human reaction their models had predicted. Such technology sharing requires extensive review. They began. Surely not when lives are at stake, Alina countered smoothly. Unless the Concord suggests the safety protocols that could have prevented this tragedy should remain restricted, that would raise uncomfortable questions. The session ended in bureaucratic stalemate, but Alina had achieved her objective. As she returned to her quarters, she received confirmation from Commander Wright. During the confusion, their operatives had recovered evidence from the outpost's backup systems. It was deliberate, Wright's message confirmed, and they left fingerprints this time. Alina's expression hardened. Prepare the evidence package for our allies, she instructed her staff. It's time for Phase 2. The stellar Voyager drifted accidentally into restricted Xalvor space, its engines cycling through a convincing simulation of navigational system failure. Commander Wright observed the approaching Concord security vessels from the bridge, their predictable formation exactly as intelligence had suggested. Maintain distress signals, she ordered calmly. Sensor packages active but camouflage. The luxury cruise vessel's outward appearance belied its true capabilities. Beneath the civilian amenities lay cutting-edge surveillance technology designed to appear as standard equipment during inspections. Concord vessels hailing us, reported her communications officer. Wright nodded. Accept transmission. Activate protocol apologetic tourist. The view screen flickered to life, revealing an irritated Xalvor commander. Wright immediately launched into a performance of flustered incompetence. Oh, thank goodness you found us. Our navigation systems are experiencing the strangest malfunction. We've been trying to reach the Rigel Leisure District for 6 hours. While she distracted the commander with excessive apologies and technical questions, the Voyager's hidden systems mapped the classified military installation nearby. Particularly valuable were readings of the energy signatures from what appeared to be components of the containment network being assembled around human space. We'll escort you back to authorized transit lanes. The Salvor commander finally interrupted, clearly exhausted by Wright's performance. "You're so kind. Please accept this token of our appreciation." Wright gestured, and her first officer displayed an enormous gift basket of Earth delicacies, specifically selected to include items that would cause digestive distress in avian species without technically violating any health regulations. After the Concorde vessels departed, Wright dropped her facade and reviewed the intelligence gathered. This was their third such navigational error this month, each yielding critical data about the containment network's structure and vulnerabilities. "Transmit findings through dispersed channels," she ordered. "Then prepare for Phase 2 of Alina's Cultural Preservation Directive." Meanwhile, on Proxima Station, Alina was implementing her own offensive, using the Concorde's Cultural Preservation Directive. Originally designed to protect vulnerable species from outside influence, she had systematically identified and removed dozens of Concorde cultural attaches from human worlds. Ambassador Reyes protested the more representative during an emergency session. "These removals disrupt essential diplomatic functions." "We're simply applying the directive as written," Alina replied innocently. "If certain attaches' cultural influence poses potential risks to human development, we must exercise caution." The Concorde itself established this principle. The frustration among founding species was palpable, but they couldn't object without undermining their own regulations. Younger member species watched with growing interest as humans wielded Concorde bureaucracy with unprecedented effectiveness. The turning point came when Alina petitioned for humanity's inclusion on the Defense Council. Rather than accepting the usual bureaucratic deflections, she invoked an obscure procedural rule requiring public hearing for petitions with multi-species endorsement, which she had quietly secured from the Nurathi and veterans. After hours of procedural maneuvering, the more representative Sith-Cal finally lost composure. "Humans are fundamentally unsuited for strategic responsibilities." The silicon-based diplomat crystallized in agitation. "Your species lacks the evolutionary stability for such authority." The chamber fell silent at this unprecedented breach of the Concorde's equality pretense. "Thank you for your honesty," Alina responded, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. Earth would rather face open prejudice than hidden manipulation. The session dissolved into chaos as representatives from recently admitted species began questioning their own treaties. Later that evening, Alina received an unexpected visitor, Nal Ven, representative of the Nurathi. "Your persistence has exposed inconsistencies we've long suspected," the amphibious diplomat admitted. "My government has authorized me to propose a private intelligence exchange." New Terra's capital city shimmered under the binary suns, its architecture a blend of Earth traditions and adaptive colonial design. Governor Okafor stood on her office balcony, watching Concorde environmental specialists disembark from their vessels. Their formal uniforms couldn't disguise the military bearing of the Salvor officers among them. "They're not even trying to maintain the pretense," remarked her security chief, Colonel Martinez. "Good," Okafor replied. "It makes our response simpler. Activate Protocol Thoro." Throughout the city, civilians received the alert on their implants. Families emerged from homes and businesses, assembling in predetermined formations that appeared random but followed carefully designed patterns. Children carried educational materials, adults brought household items, and no one carried anything resembling a weapon. When the Concorde team arrived at the first residential sector designated for emergency evacuation, they found hundreds of colonists sitting peacefully in their paths, singing Earth folk songs and recording every interaction on multiple devices. The Salvor commander, unprepared for this response, consulted his tactical display. "You must evacuate immediately. Environmental contaminants have been detected." An elderly woman, actually New Terra's leading atmospheric scientist, smiled pleasantly. "We'd be happy to review your findings. I've brought my analysis equipment." She gestured to a portable scanner. "Perhaps we could examine the data together." Similar scenes unfolded across the city. Concorde forces, trained for either compliance or armed resistance, found themselves confronting polite but immovable human obstacles who documented every interaction while meticulously following nonviolent resistance protocols. The crisis point came at the Central Medical Facility, where Dr. Maya Chen, a 70-year-old physician who had treated patients of all species for decades, refused to abandon critical care patients. These life support systems cannot be moved without endangering lives, she explained calmly to the increasingly frustrated Salvor officer. I'll be happy to evacuate once you provide equivalent medical facilities. The officer, young and lacking diplomatic experience, made a fatal error. Irritated by what he perceived as human obstinance, he struck Dr. Chen, sending her frail form sprawling across the clinic floor. The moment was captured from 17 different angles by observers who had anticipated such a reaction. Within minutes, the footage began spreading through Concord communications channels, carefully routed through Elena's newly established alliance networks to bypass censorship protocols. On Proxima Station, Elena ensured this evidence, along with proof the environmental crisis was fabricated, reached every species simultaneously. She added internal Concord communications discussing New Terra's strategic resources as the actual motivation for the evacuation. The response exceeded her expectations. The Neurothi formally withdrew from 3 joint defense initiatives. The veterans publicly questioned the environmental data's validity. Most significantly, the Lyrillin, oldest of the non-founding members, called for an emergency review of Concord leadership. As diplomatic chaos spread, Dr. Lay made his most significant discovery. Analyzing centuries of Concord records using pattern-matching algorithms, he identified references to 2 pre-spaceflight civilizations that were systematically isolated and studied. Test cases for the containment strategy later applied to humans. They'd done this before, he told Elena via secure channel. The evidence suggests one civilization was driven to self-destruction through carefully orchestrated resource conflicts. The other remains under observation, their development artificially stunted. Elena presented these findings during an emergency session. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. 7 species announced treaty renegotiations within hours. The founding members found themselves increasingly isolated. Their response came without warning. Massive energy signatures activated throughout human space as the previously hidden containment network revealed itself. Concord warships moved into blockade positions around key human worlds. In her command center, Governor Okafor received the alert just as Concord forces began forcibly removing colonists from strategic locations. They've abandoned all pretense, she reported to Earth. Operation Papercut. The response came directly from Elena. Authorized. Show them why humans make terrible prisoners. The response began with silence. Throughout human space, communication networks went dark in a synchronized shutdown that appeared to Concord monitoring systems as a catastrophic infrastructure failure. For 7 critical minutes, human vessels and installations showed no signs of coordinated activity. Then came the whispers. Thousands of transmission bursts, seemingly random but precisely timed, activating Operation Papercut across 37 systems simultaneously. Aboard the Odyssey, now revealed as an advanced command center, Commander Wright coordinated the asymmetric response. The vessel's true nature became apparent as concealed systems activated, transforming its communication hub into a tactical operations center. All units confirm adaptive patterns, reported her executive officer. The Concord is responding with standard containment protocols, exactly as predicted. Wright nodded in satisfaction. They're still fighting the last war. Execute precision strikes on priority targets. Throughout human space, vessels previously disguised as mining ships, civilian transports, and even orbital habitats revealed their true capabilities. But rather than engaging Concord warships directly, they executed precisely calculated attacks on the containment network's infrastructure. Near Europa, a converted ice harvester targeted a power relay, disguised as a navigation beacon. In the Tau CD system, Apparent refugee transports disabled communication nodes with minimal yield electromagnetic pulses calibrated to disrupt systems without causing structural damage. The Concorde response betrayed their confusion. Massive warships deployed to defend critical installations found themselves pursuing sensor ghosts and responding to phantom distress calls while human vessels struck elsewhere. Meanwhile, Kai led the digital offensive from a secure facility beneath Olympus Mons. His team exploited access points hidden within shared commercial databases, introducing subtle errors into Concorde targeting systems. Coordinates drifted by imperceptible increments, communication protocols randomly transposed words, and authentication systems occasionally rejected valid credentials. "We're not trying to crash their systems," Kai explained to his team. "We're introducing doubt. In a military hierarchy that expects perfect obedience, uncertainty is paralyzing." The strategy proved devastatingly effective. The Moor and Azalvor Central Fleet, dispatched to crush what they perceived as a disorganized rebellion, found itself fragmenting into individual tactical units as coordinated response became increasingly difficult. When their vessels arrived at the Jupiter defense perimeter, they encountered minimal resistance because Earth's forces were implementing Elena's strategy across dozens of systems simultaneously. Precious resources were diverted to defend the Jupiter installations, only to discover the human forces had withdrawn, leaving automated defenses that required minimal resources to tie down significant Concorde assets. On Proxima Station, Elena led a different kind of assault. With support from now 7 allied species, she convened an emergency General Assembly, bypassing the Leadership Council. The evidence presented was damning. Centuries of manipulation exposed in meticulous detail. The Concorde was founded on principles of mutual respect and cooperation. Elena addressed the hushed assembly. Those principles were betrayed not by those challenging authority today, but by those who twisted that authority to contain rather than uplift. As she spoke, real-time tactical displays showed the containment network around Earth failing system by system, not through overwhelming force, but through precisely targeted strikes against vulnerable nodes identified through weeks of intelligence gathering. Commander Wright's strategy, 1,000 cuts rather than a killing blow, proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that expected either submission or frontal assault. The Concorde's massive technological advantage was neutralized by an approach that didn't target their strengths, but systematically eliminated their coordination capabilities. On New Terra, Governor Okafor watched Concorde forces withdraw in disarray as their command structures failed. The colonists, still maintaining their nonviolent resistance, began reclaiming evacuated sectors with disciplined precision. "This isn't victory yet," she cautioned her people, "but it's the beginning of something new." Across human space and beyond, the message spread. The cage was breaking. Not through the expected violence that would have justified further containment, but through a uniquely human approach that exposed the lie at the heart of the Concorde's peace. Armstrong Base sprawled across the lunar regolith, its transparent main dome revealing Earth hanging in the black sky, a deliberate architectural choice for the most significant diplomatic gathering in human history. Within the Grand Hall, representatives from 22 species moved through an atmosphere charged with possibility. The floor beneath them contained soil samples from every represented homeworld, embedded in transparent aluminum, a material developed through the first true collaboration between human engineers and veteran crystal crafters. Elena approached the podium, conscious of the billions watching across multiple worlds. 6 months of frantic negotiation, tactical positioning, and coalition building had led to this moment. The collapse of the old Concorde had created a power vacuum that could either lead to chaos or renewal. "The peace we establish today is not maintained through hidden clauses or implied threats," she told the assembled delegates, her voice steady and clear. "It is maintained through shared prosperity and genuine respect for our differences." As she outlined the core principles of the new interstellar cooperative, Elena noted the varying reactions among the delegates. The younger species showed obvious enthusiasm. The Nurethi representative's skin rippled with chromatic patterns indicating approval. The Lyrilan delegation remained reserved but attentive. Most telling were the representatives from the reformed Salvor government. The previous leadership had been replaced following internal political upheaval, with younger, reform-minded officials taking control. Their presence here, without the Moor, who remained isolated in their core systems, signaled a significant shift in galactic politics. The new charter differed fundamentally from the Concord Treaties. Rather than vague principles subject to interpretation, it established clear mechanisms for dispute resolution, technology sharing, and mutual defense. Most significantly, it included provisions specifically prohibiting the kind of species-based discrimination that had formed the Concord's unspoken foundation. As delegates came forward to add their biometric signatures to the document, side conversations revealed the changing dynamics. A young Salvor diplomat discussed cultural exchange programs with a human educational representative, but unlike previous hollow gestures, this included specific commitments to two-way knowledge transfer. More surprising was the sight of veteran scientists consulting with Dr. Lay about joint research initiatives. The veterans, once reluctant to share their biological expertise, now recognize the potential benefits of combining it with human innovation approaches. After the formal ceremony concluded, the Lena met with representatives from those pre-spaceflight civilizations previously kept isolated by the Concorde. The meeting took place in a smaller chamber designed to accommodate their environmental needs. "We offer not membership in an existing structure," the Lena explained to beings experiencing their first contact beyond Concorde control, "but partnership in building something better. Your worlds were denied their rightful place. We will not repeat that injustice." Later, the Lena found a moment alone on the observation deck overlooking Earth. Commander Wright joined her, now wearing the uniform of the Cooperative's Joint Security Force. "Was it worth it?" Wright asked, gesturing toward the diplomatic compound where negotiations continued. "All the deception, the risk." The Lena considered the question, watching the blue planet that had nearly been contained. "We could have accepted their cage," she finally answered. "But that's not who we are. Humanity doesn't just break chains, we forge new connections." Below them, Earth shined against the blackness of space, no longer isolated but truly connected. One world among many in a galaxy learning that peace doesn't require submission. "The Concorde thought they understood us based on our history," Alina said softly. "They studied our conflicts, our aggression, our tendency to resist control. What they failed to understand was that same fire could be channeled into something constructive." Wright smiled slightly. "Diplomatic fury." "Exactly," Alina agreed. "We didn't break their treaties. We fulfilled their true purpose. Peace with justice, not peace through containment." As they turned to rejoin the gathering, the first communication arrived from a previously unknown species at the galaxy's edge, drawn by news of the Cooperative's formation. The cycle of contact would begin again, but this time, with fundamentally different principles guiding the encounter. Humanity had not just secured its freedom, it had transformed the very nature of galactic diplomacy, not through overwhelming force, but through the creative application of righteous fury channeled through diplomacy, perhaps humanity's most powerful and unexpected weapon of all.